Chuangkong's heart stirred. When he focused his gaze, he noticed that the ancient crystal lamp at the center of the formation had undergone a change. Beneath the lotus-shaped lamp tray, the eyes of the four strange beasts had begun glowing with an eerie red light. Chuangkong merely glanced at the crimson glow when a loud hum erupted inside his head. His entire body jolted as though struck by lightning. The blood throughout his body seemed to boil. Intense heat swept through him, making even breathing difficult. He hurriedly forced himself to calm down and activated his cultivation technique to protect his entire body. However, when he looked at the four strange beasts again, he suddenly felt as though they had come alive. Each one bared its teeth at him, emitting sinister laughter. An indescribable wave of resentment surged through his heart. In his dazed state, he felt that heaven and earth had treated him with unbearable injustice. He had never wished to compete with anyone. He had wanted nothing to do with the struggle among his siblings. All he desired was to become a wealthy merchant who could travel freely across the world, accumulate immense riches, and collect every rare and precious treasure beneath the heavens. What could be more carefree than such a life? Yet his eldest brother, his fifth sister, and even several of his other siblings seemed to harbor hostility toward him, both openly and in secret. Why? Since they had shown him no mercy, they could not blame Chuangkong for becoming merciless in return. Gradually, his naturally handsome face twisted into a savage expression, while his eyes filled with violent brutality. At that moment, a stern shout suddenly rang out from nowhere. The voice was extremely familiar. It belonged to Han Li. Only after the shout echoed through his mind did Chuangkong feel his thoughts suddenly clear. The strange visions and sounds before his eyes and ears vanished entirely. His complexion looked terrible, and lingering fear filled his heart. After regaining his composure, he looked at the crystal lamp again. The red glow was still present, but it was being forcibly suppressed by an immense power of divine sense. That power naturally came from Han Li. Although Han Li appeared completely calm on the surface, enormous turbid waves were already raging inside his sea of consciousness. He could not tell whether the grand refinement method left behind by the purple and cyan pair had been false, or whether he had simply injected too many crystalline threads of divine sense into the lamp. Whatever the cause, the lamp had launched a backlash. The four strange beasts had manifested directly inside his sea of consciousness. They were greedily absorbing his divine sense and attempting to devour his soul as well. Inside his sea of consciousness, four enormous phantom beasts advanced slowly from the east, south, west, and north. As they closed in on the center, they continuously compressed the surrounding space. Han Li silently recited the fifth-level incantation of the spirit refinement technique and began activating it with all his strength. Powerful waves of spiritual consciousness immediately expanded from the center of his sea of consciousness. They transformed into towering waves that surged outward and crashed against the four beasts, obstructing their advance. However, this was only a temporary measure. It could delay the crisis but could not resolve it. Freeze! Han Li suddenly shouted. It was as though a violent blizzard had swept through his entire sea of consciousness. A wave of snow-white light surged across it, instantly freezing everything and sealing all four beasts within the ice. With their movements restrained, Han Li finally gained a moment to breathe. Just as he prepared to take further action, a sharp cracking sound rang out. After absorbing such a vast amount of his divine sense, the four beasts could no longer be contained by the ice. One after another, they shattered their frozen prisons and roared as they continued converging on the center of his sea of consciousness. A pressure far stronger than before filled the entire space, and it continued growing at an alarming rate. Han Li's heart sank. He understood that once the four beasts completely surrounded him and compressed his sea of consciousness to its limit, his divine sense would be utterly exhausted. His soul would then dissipate, leaving behind nothing more than an empty, walking corpse. Just as he found himself trapped in this desperate situation, a patch of purple light suddenly appeared above his sea of consciousness. Streams of warm and soothing energy poured from it, flowing into his sea of consciousness and rapidly replenishing his depleted divine sense. Han Li's spirits rose. He hurriedly activated an incantation and gathered all his divine sense together, doing his utmost to merge it with the incoming power. At the same time, he condensed even larger and more powerful waves than before, using them to block the beasts advancing from every direction. Although the beasts slowed considerably, they continued creeping closer. Hanli felt the pressure inside his sea of consciousness becoming increasingly intense. As the available space contracted, his divine sense seemed to be extracted from him drop by drop. The patch of purple light above also became distorted under the mounting compression, as though it had been crumpled into a ball. A suffocating sense of terror arose within him. At that exact moment, a thunderous explosion suddenly echoed throughout his entire sea of consciousness. The crumpled purple light abruptly erupted with dazzling brilliance before spreading outward in sheets of purple radiance. A deafening roar followed. The final bottleneck that had obstructed him for so long had unexpectedly shattered beneath this extreme pressure. The 5th level of the spirit refinement technique had finally reached completion. Before Hanli could celebrate, winds and clouds surged violently through his sea of consciousness. Immense quantities of divine sense gathered high above. Every strand of light gradually converged until it formed an enormous sword made entirely from divine sense. The sword was partially transparent and engraved with countless strange runes. Powerful fluctuations of divine sense radiated from it like crushing waves of pressure, sweeping in every direction. As the enormous sword slowly descended from above, increasingly powerful fluctuations pressed outward. The 4 beast phantoms, which had previously seemed unstoppable, began retreating little by little under the sword's suppression. They were forced farther and farther back until they were expelled from Hanli's sea of consciousness entirely. On the small boat, Shi Chuankong stared nervously at Hanli. He was still holding a piece of purple sun-warmed jade in his hand, hesitating over whether he should place it above Hanli's head. At that moment, a partially transparent streak of crystalline light suddenly shot from between Hanli's brows. Shi Chuankong was startled and was about to dodge when he discovered that the crystalline light contained a small translucent sword. It had stopped steadily just before the center of his forehead. Shi Chuankong remained motionless. He merely lowered his eyes toward the soul-devouring lamp. After seeing that the red glow in the 4 beasts' eyes had been extinguished, he finally relaxed slightly and collapsed backward, landing heavily on his rear. Across from him, Hanli slowly opened his eyes. A brilliant divine light gleamed within his pupils, clearly showing that he was no longer in danger. The partially transparent sword of divine sense flew backward, entered the space between his brows and disappeared. Hanli glanced at the small piece of purple sun-warmed jade still floating above his head, then at the second piece in Shi Chuankong's hand. His heart stirred slightly. He cupped his hands toward Shi Chuankong. "I owe you greatly for your assistance today, Brother Shi. Without you, the consequences would have been unimaginable. There's no need to be so polite. I'm counting on you to become even stronger. That way, I'll feel much safer whenever we encounter trouble in the future," Shi Chuankong replied, waving dismissively. He then changed the subject. "But first, tell me what happened. Everything was going perfectly well. Why did you suddenly suffer a backlash?" "I'm not completely certain. When I was injecting crystalline threads of divine sense into the soul-devouring lamp, I may have failed to control the amount properly. Too much spiritual consciousness entered the lamp and triggered a backlash from the 4 beast statues. Fortunately, you protected my soul with the purple sun-warmed jade at the critical moment and replenished the gap in my divine sense. That gave me the opportunity to break through my bottleneck and reverse the situation," Hanli explained. Shi Chuankong found much of the explanation difficult to understand, but after connecting it with what he had just witnessed, he could roughly grasp how dangerous the situation had been. "What was that partially transparent sword just now?" he asked, still puzzled. "That was the sword of divine sense. It is another divine sense ability that I obtained after completing the 5th level of the spirit refinement technique. I cannot yet say exactly how powerful it is, but it certainly will not be weak," Hanli replied after a brief hesitation. Since the matter involved another person's cultivation abilities, Shi Chuankong did not continue asking questions, even though he remained curious. While they spoke, the strange phenomenon surrounding the stone staircase on the cliff had already disappeared behind them. Their small boat had also glided out of the broad stretch of water, leaving only winding ripples across the river. Time passed swiftly. In the blink of an eye, 80 years had gone by. Across a gloomy sea as black as ink, An enormous black whale carried an island thousands of meters wide upon its back. It cut through the waves and swam steadily forward. The island stood less than 100 meters tall and was mostly flat. Dense vegetation covered its surface, while pavilions and towers could faintly be seen among the trees. At the center of the island, two figures sat opposite each other inside a small pavilion built atop a hill. A gentle breeze swept around them as they drank wine in great comfort. "Brother Sure, there are only two of us, yet you rented this entire traveling whale island. Isn't this a little too extravagant?" Hanli asked with a smile. He sat on the left, dressed in green robes and holding a wine cup. "Brother Li, could you stop acting as though you haven't benefited from this?" Shi Chuankong replied irritably. "I rented the whole island because its formations can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth while filtering out the surrounding demonic energy. I did it so you could remain comfortable. I'm only worried that such extravagance will attract unnecessary attention. The closer we get to the central region, the denser the demonic energy between heaven and earth becomes. Although I have cultivated demonic techniques before, I still need to resist it constantly. It is rather troublesome," Hanli said with a bitter smile. "That is precisely why appearances should alternate between truth and deception. Since they cannot determine our exact movements, they naturally cannot intercept us," Shi Chuankong said with a laugh. "Your eldest brother and fifth sister are far from ordinary. The last 20 years may have appeared peaceful, but they could easily have been preparing another scheme. We must remain cautious," Hanli warned. "There is no need to worry too much. We are almost at the Inxi region. Once we arrive there, Night Sun City will only be a short distance away. We should certainly remain vigilant, but there is no need to be overly cautious anymore," Shi Chuankong said with a broad smile before draining his cup. A loud, prolonged cry suddenly came from the black whale beneath them. Shi Chuankong frowned slightly and looked toward the distant sea. Nothing could be seen there, but his expression nevertheless became tense. He cautiously turned toward Hanli, afraid that Hanli might accuse him of bringing misfortune with his words again. "It is only a powerful underwater creature. Its aura is merely at the peak of the golden immortal realm, and it does not seem particularly violent or aggressive," Hanli said after glancing into the distance. The moment he finished speaking, a bright fluorescent glow suddenly appeared beneath the sea ahead. The dark surface churned violently as an enormous mound of water rose upward. Beneath it was a gigantic white jellyfish, far larger than the black whale. Its entire body was partially transparent, and brilliant crystalline light shone from within, making it resemble a white lantern reflected upon the sea. "Strange. That is a clear heart jellyfish. These creatures normally remain in the deepest parts of the Inxi region. Why has one surfaced today?" Shi Chuankong exclaimed, his eyes narrowing in surprise. Hanli's expression changed instantly. "Move!" Golden light erupted around his body as he stepped sideways. The mantra treasure wheel within him began rotating rapidly in reverse. He seized the still confused Shi Chuankong, and the two disappeared in a flash. They had barely soared into the sky when the jellyfish collided with the black whale. A deafening explosion followed. The white jellyfish erupted with brilliant light and detonated directly. At the same time, muffled thunder sounded from inside the enormous black whale. Its body exploded violently, and every bone within it separated from the surrounding flesh. The blood-covered bones shot into the air, pursuing Hanli and Shi Chuankong like countless spears. After reaching the sky, the two immediately turned around and punched downward. A tremendous roar shook the air. One green and one silver fist projection descended from above and collided with the blood-covered white bones. Both fist projections exploded simultaneously, shattering the whale's bones along with them and reducing everything to a cloud of white powder. Before Hanli and Shi Chuankong could identify what had happened, a white figure shot from within the cloud of powder. The figure swept a palm through the air. A layer of white light immediately expanded outward and enveloped both men. Thick white mist filled the barrier, accompanied by waves of sinister ghostly energy. In the hazy distance, enormous tower-shaped structures rose one after another, taking positions in every direction. Hanli and Shi Chuankong's expressions changed dramatically. "You two little vermin may not possess impressive cultivation, but you are certainly cunning. You forced this old man to search for far too long. Unless I grind your bones into dust and scatter your ashes, I will never relieve the hatred in my heart. The voice seemed to come from both near and far, shifting unpredictably through the mist. Damn it! That old monster Xiaogu has caught up with us. He truly refuses to leave us alone, Shi Chuankong cursed inwardly. Purple radiance flashed through Han Li's eyes as he instantly activated the 9 nether demon eyes and surveyed his surroundings. The sight made his scalp turn numb. In each of the 8 surrounding directions stood a towering mound made from white bones. Every structure was hundreds of meters tall and densely packed with pale skulls. Green ghostly flames burned inside every empty eye socket. The skull at the top of each bone mound was different from the rest. Some were crystalline and smooth as jade, while others shone brilliantly like gold. They had clearly belonged to high-level cultivators before their deaths. A hidden connection existed among the 8 structures. Together, they formed a strange and sinister bone formation. Waves of freezing energy radiated from it, affecting even the circulation of immortal spiritual power within Han Li and Shi Chuankong. Facing a furious cultivator of the Donhua realm, Han Li naturally did not dare to be careless. He swept his hand outward. A golden barrier immediately expanded and enveloped an area several hundred meters wide, attempting to slow the corrosive force hidden in the surroundings. Inside his time spirit domain, the white mist moved noticeably slower. However, the temperature continued falling, while the surrounding light became increasingly dim. Today, this old man would like to see where else you can run. Following the furious roar, the sound of rolling waves filled the air. Han Li looked downward. Within the dense mist below, streaks of blood-red light had appeared. A hellish crater hundreds of meters wide had materialized from nowhere upon the Black Sea. Dark smoke billowed from within the crater. Something resembling molten lava churned inside, yet it emitted no heat whatsoever. Countless headless white skeletons struggled uselessly within the lava. They climbed over one another in a desperate attempt to escape the crater, only to push each other back down and sink once more into the molten depths. At that moment, a symbol resembling a sacred mantra simultaneously appeared above each of the 8 unusual skulls, atop the surrounding bone mounds. Every skull in the structure seemed to come alive. Their jaws trembled violently, producing a dense series of eerie clattering sounds. The hellish crater below also began shaking. The molten substance, which had previously only bubbled calmly, rose rapidly and seemed ready to erupt. The countless skeletons submerged inside were lifted along with it, rising into the air. Han Li frowned deeply, his expression grave. He no longer had time to wonder how Taoist Xiaogu had located them, or concealed himself inside the clear heart jellyfish. His only concern was finding a way to survive and escape. Brother Li, that old monster's withered bone spirit domain is extremely powerful. It is a genuine spirit domain that has reached the creation realm. Our situation is becoming dangerous. We should look for an opportunity to separate and escape in different directions, Shi Chuankong said. That old man clearly prepared everything in advance. Escaping this time will not be easy, Han Li replied with a bitter smile. He had encountered creation realm spirit domains in the past, but this was the first time one had placed him under such overwhelming pressure. Shi Chuankong had clearly noticed the same thing, and his complexion became extremely ugly. They're coming, Han Li suddenly shouted, his pupils contracting. The hellish crater below finally erupted. Blood-red lava surged upward, carrying countless headless skeletons into the sky as they charged directly at the 2 men. Within the bloody radiance, every skeleton seemed to come alive. Their joints stretched and cracked as they silently advanced, each gripping a weapon forged from white bone. Domain spirits? Has that old monster already refined his spirit domain to the spirit transformation realm? Shi Chuankong exclaimed. He immediately flipped his hand and summoned a black battle saber. Purple light flickered continuously within Han Li's eyes. He casually waved his hand, causing a silver doorway to appear beside him. Taoist crab stepped through it with an indifferent expression and emerged above the sea. So you even possess a cave heaven treasure. It seems this expedition may compensate me for at least part of my losses. Taoist Xiaogu's voice drifted from an unknown location. Han Li ignored him. Judging by their auras, these creatures appear to be Dao soldiers rather than domain spirits. Or perhaps they are Dao soldiers resembling domain spirits. he said to Kong. He then turned toward Taoist Crab and nodded. Taoist Crab flipped his palm. A green gourd appeared in his hand. He pointed its opening downward and struck its base sharply. Green light flashed. Countless golden beams shot from the mouth of the gourd and rained toward the sea below. Bursts of purple-gold radiance appeared throughout the air. Lightning coiled around every golden beam before each transformed into a golden armored Dao soldier more than 3 meters tall, covered in purple patterns. Every soldier possessed exactly the same face. Their features appeared somewhat stiff and unnatural, but a hidden gleam remained within their eyes, giving them a faint sense of intelligence. Each wore ancient golden armor marked by purple patterns. The armor protected every vital area of their bodies, and was decorated with intricate designs that radiated a powerful, righteous presence. No commands were required. Purple and golden lightning immediately appeared in the palms of every Dao soldier. The electricity first spread outward like wings and formed broad nets. It then rapidly contracted into lightning weapons of various shapes. Powerful thunderous auras rolled from their bodies. The moment the several thousand Dao soldiers finished materializing, the headless skeletons surged upward from below. The two armies collided directly in midair. Thunder roared repeatedly. Several thousand bolts of purple-gold lightning rose from the soldiers' hands and exploded simultaneously. They illuminated the dark sky like a magnificent display of fireworks. Han Li swept his gaze across the battlefield. Wherever the lightning passed, the white skeletons shattered and collapsed before falling into the hellish crater, where they were swallowed by the rolling lava. Deep within the mist, a faint white figure paused. A surprise sound escaped it before it shifted and vanished into the fog again. Han Li sensed the movement and turned toward that area, but he saw only flowing mist and empty space. That old fox Xiaogu possesses Daoyuo cultivation, yet he still refuses to approach us recklessly. It appears he has already investigated our abilities thoroughly, Han Li transmitted. After so many years, information about us has probably spread throughout the Holy Realm. It is not surprising that he knows what we can do. You have spent these years cultivating diligently, but I have not remained idle either. My cultivation realm has restricted me from making any major progress, but as long as we can break out of the withered bone spirit domain, I can activate a spatial secret technique and transport both of us away instantly, Kong replied through transmission. As far as I know, a creation realm spirit domain differs from an ordinary spirit domain. It can strengthen the law attributes attached to the space within it. Breaking through will be extremely difficult. Moreover, Xiaogu is hiding nearby, which makes the task even harder, Han Li responded. If you can destroy one of the bone mounds, I can sacrifice some blood essence and attempt to activate the technique forcibly. We can escape through the resulting gap, Kong said after a brief hesitation. That appears to be our only option, Han Li replied with a nod. At that moment, another disturbance erupted among the Dao soldiers below. Han Li lowered his gaze. The shattered bones that had fallen back into the hellish crater were reassembling themselves. Each skeleton returned to its original form before charging upward and rejoining the battle. At the same time, an enormous skeletal hand suddenly emerged from the crater. It seized the edge and pulled upward with tremendous force. A colossal skeleton erupted from the molten depths. It was more than 100 meters tall and possessed 4 arms. Like the smaller creatures, it had no head. Clusters of blood-red flames revolved around its bones, while each of its 4 hands held a long skeletal sword engraved with densely packed dark inscriptions. The 4-armed skeleton kicked off with both legs and shot upward, charging directly into the formation of Dao soldiers. Hundreds of soldiers immediately surrounded it and slashed with their weapons. Streams of purple-gold lightning erupted from their blades and struck the enormous skeleton. Blood-red light flashed around the creature. The flames surrounding it expanded and transformed into armor made from bloody radiance. A strange power flowed through the armor, blocking every bolt of lightning. Leave it to me, Taoist Crab said calmly. He spread both arms. 2 ancient battle sabers wrapped in lightning appeared and landed in his hands. Electricity flashed across his body, and he vanished with a sudden thunderclap. In the next instant, a muffled explosion sounded in the air before the 4-armed skeleton. Taoist Crab appeared in a flash. 2 brilliant sheets of lightning shone beside him like enormous wings and descended toward the headless skeletal giant. A succession of earth-shaking explosions followed. Under the combined assault of Taoist crab and the surrounding Tao soldiers, vast amounts of purple-gold lightning condensed into enormous spheres. The spheres then exploded one after another, transforming into a gigantic electrical net that covered the entire four-armed skeleton. At that moment, another powerful aura emerged from the hellish crater. A second enormous white skeleton slowly climbed from the lava. It was even larger than the first. Hanli knew that the longer the battle continued, the more disadvantageous their situation would become. He swept his hand outward. 18 azure bamboo cloud swarm swords shot through the air toward one of the bone mounds. A piercing howl rang out. Sword energy erupted from all 18 blades as they spun through the sky. Thousands of hazy green sword projections appeared around them, merging into a vast and surging torrent. Although Hanli formed sword seals to control the flying swords, his divine sense remained fully extended as he searched for Taoist Zhaogu's true body. However, because he was trapped inside another person's spirit domain, his senses were inherently suppressed. Even with his powerful spiritual consciousness, he could not determine Zhaogu's exact location. The torrent of sword projections surged forward and quickly reached the bone mound. The green ghostly flames inside every skull's eye sockets flickered violently before suddenly expanding several times in size. Streams of green smoke poured from their open jaws and rushed toward the approaching sword projections. The moment the thousands of swords entered the smoke, strands of green vapor wrapped around them as though they were solid ropes. Green corrosion rapidly appeared across their surfaces, causing them to rust and decay at an astonishing speed. In only an instant, nearly 1,000 sword projections were corroded, disintegrated, and erased. Hanli sensed the unusual nature of the green smoke. His hand seal changed abruptly. Explode! A violent burst of lightning rang out. Brilliant golden electricity erupted from within the green smoke. Countless golden threads of lightning spread outward, tearing the entire cloud apart and reducing it to scattered fragments. The green smoke contained a sinister, corrosive aura. However, before lightning that combined evil-warding divine lightning and bone-cleansing golden lightning, it offered no resistance and was completely destroyed. The bone mound behind it was exposed once again. "You truly possess some ability, brat." Unfortunately, a voice suddenly sounded from extremely close to Hanli, carrying a trace of admiration. Hanli frowned. He appeared unable to divert his attention and continued concentrating on the remaining sword projections as they stabbed toward the bone mound. At that moment, however, the mound suddenly lit up. Every pale skull detached and flew outward, dispersing in all directions and deliberately clearing the space ahead. The azure bamboo cloud swarm sword struck nothing but empty air. By the time Hanli attempted to release a wide-ranging lightning attack to pursue the skulls, it was already too late. Even more troublesome, the scattered skulls curved through the air from every direction and rushed directly toward Hanli and Shichuankong. Despite the suppression of Hanli's spirit domain, they still moved with astonishing speed. Seeing this, Shichuankong prepared to halt the escape technique he had been building and use a spatial ability to block the skulls. Hanli's urgent transmission suddenly rang in his mind. "The opening has already appeared. Do not stop under any circumstances. Leave these things to me." Shichuankong's heart steadied. Without saying another word, he continued activating the secret technique. Hanli withdrew his sword seal and silently circulated the mantra wheel scripture. A dazzling golden light appeared behind him. At that exact moment, an unexpected change occurred. Before the mantra treasure wheel could fully emerge, Hanli's body suddenly stiffened. The immortal spiritual power circulating within him also stopped completely. His heart tightened. He immediately discovered that every bone in his body seemed to have escaped his control. His arms lifted upward and spread to both sides, making him resemble a man nailed to a cross. He could not move at all. Not far away, Shichuankong's secret technique had also been forcibly interrupted. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, and he too had been frozen in place. Only Taoist crab and the lightning-armored Tao soldiers remained unaffected and continued moving freely. Upon noticing Hanli's condition, Taoist crab tightened his grip around the two battle sabers, Thunderslang and Sky Severing. He crossed them before his body. Lightning erupted from both weapons and exploded the moment they touched. A deafening boom shook the sky. Violent electricity spread outward, blasting apart more than 1,000 surrounding skeletons. Two dazzling streams of lightning intertwined and transformed into a spiraling pillar that shot toward Hanli high above. However, after traveling only a short distance, a figure emerged from the mist directly in its path. The figure swept his sleeve. A powerful wave surged outward and struck the spiraling pillar. Another explosion of violent lightning illuminated the dark sky. Countless electrical threads scattered in every direction as Taoist crab fell from within the shattered radiance. As he approached the sea, two gigantic headless skeletons closed in from the left and right. They swung their bone weapons and trapped him in battle. The figure above wore dark green Taoist robes. He was thin with a refined and gaunt face. It was Taoist Xiaogu. He glanced down at Taoist crab and gave a contemptuous snort before turning toward Han Li. Among everyone present above the sea, only Han Li's cultivation, temperament and command of law powers were sufficient to earn even a small amount of his respect. How does it feel to have every bone in your body imprisoned? Taoist Xiaogu asked with a cold smile from several dozen meters away. Do not worry. I will soon turn both of you into members of my bone mounds. He waved his hand. The skulls suspended in the air immediately flew forward one after another. Their jaws opened wide as they lunged at Han Li and Shi Chuankong. Wherever the skulls passed, blood sprayed through the air. The skin across both men's bodies split open, exposing horrifying wounds of mangled flesh. The pain of having their flesh torn away inch by inch was displayed clearly across their bodies. Yet they could do nothing but watch. They were unable to struggle or resist. Shi Chuankong possessed the body of a true devil, while Han Li possessed the physique of a profound immortal. Neither had a weak physical body. Each time the skulls tore away a piece of flesh, they absorbed a strand of powerful vital energy from it. The ghostly flames inside their eye sockets immediately burned more intensely. Seeing this, Taoist Xiaogu's smile grew increasingly broad. He had originally intended to kill the two men with overwhelming force. Now, however, he wanted to slowly carve away their flesh, torturing them to death piece by piece, so that he could extract the greatest possible benefit from their physical bodies. A low growl escaped Shi Chuankong's throat as he clenched his teeth. Ordinary physical pain would not have made him so much as frown. However, every time one of the skulls bit into him, a stream of green smoke entered through the wound and merged with his bones. The powerful decaying force within the smoke was the true reason the pain penetrated to his marrow. Han Li was suffering from the same attack. Deep within his wounds, his bones were crystalline and translucent, resembling flawless jade. Even under the invasion of the green smoke, they continued emitting a soft radiance. This transformation had occurred after he became a Tai Jade immortal. As a result, his resistance to the smoke's corrosive power was several times stronger than Shi Chuankong's. I nearly forgot that you are also a Tai Jade immortal, Taoist Xiaogu said with a cold laugh. After speaking, he hesitated briefly. His body suddenly blurred and vanished. In the next instant, he appeared directly before Han Li. He raised one hand, extended two fingers, and thrust them toward the center of Han Li's forehead. Every bone in Han Li's body remained imprisoned. He was completely unable to move. However, his eyes remained fixed on Taoist Xiaogu. His expression was calm, and a cold light flickered within his pupils. Just as Taoist Xiaogu's fingers were about to touch his forehead, a chilling gleam suddenly flashed through Han Li's eyes. The fifth level of the spirit refinement technique erupted into motion. Nearly all his divine sense condensed into a single point. A faint sound seemed to ring out, yet the surroundings also appeared completely silent. A partially transparent crystalline sword, only an inch long, suddenly shot from between Han Li's brows. A hazy rune flickered across its surface. In an instant, it entered the tip of Taoist Xiaogu's approaching finger. The moment Taoist Xiaogu saw the crystalline sword, he realized something was wrong. However, it was already too late to withdraw his hand. He could only circulate the immortal spiritual power within his body and attempt to resist the divine sense sword light. Yet the instant the small sword entered his fingertip, it appeared directly inside his sea of consciousness. When manifested outside, the sword of divine sense was only an inch long. The moment it entered Taoist Xiaogu's sea of consciousness, however, it transformed into an enormous blade that descended from the sky. The strange runes engraved across it flickered continuously. Powerful fluctuations of divine sense radiated from its surface, becoming immense pressure waves that crashed downward. Winds and clouds immediately surged through Taoist Zhaogu's sea of consciousness. Turbid waves towered into the air, and countless dark cracks spread throughout the surrounding space. It appeared as though the entire sea of consciousness was about to be torn apart. Within it, Taoist Zhaogu's soul had manifested as a small figure dressed in Taoist robes. Its face twisted in agony, while fear appeared in its eyes. He had never imagined that a mere early-stage Tai Jade immortal could possess such a terrifying divine sensibility. But no matter how deeply he regretted his carelessness now, it was already too late. At that moment, Immortal Zhaogu's miniature soul swept both sleeves outward. Countless specks of white radiance immediately drifted up from the depths of his sea of consciousness, surrounding him like a swarm of glowing fireflies. Beneath those points of light, an enormous rune formation engraved deep within his sea of consciousness gradually emerged. Immortal Zhaogu had never imagined that this soul formation, implanted at an unimaginable cost to defend against a mortal enemy, would prove useful at a time like this. Yet the desperate situation left him no room for hesitation. The white radiance beneath the formation grew increasingly brilliant, condensing into the enormous phantom of a strange beast resembling a fierce tiger. Its jaws opened wide as it lunged out from the depths of his sea of consciousness and charged directly toward the giant sword of spiritual sense. A thunderous explosion erupted inside Immortal Zhaogu's sea of consciousness. The giant sword descended upon the white beast's head, unleashing a dazzling burst of five-colored crystalline light. After a brief stalemate, the beast's skull was torn apart. The giant sword continued cleaving downward toward the miniature soul below. Although the white beast had been split apart, the scattered white radiance flowing from its body transformed into countless crystalline threads, tenuously binding the two halves together. Those threads resembled iron chains stretched across a great river. They continuously obstructed the descending sword, while steadily consuming its immense power. Even so, the translucent giant sword, condensed from nearly all of Han Li's spiritual sense, continued downward without pause. It tore the white beast apart completely before slashing into Immortal Zhaogu's miniature soul. Arg! A miserable scream rang out. Immortal Zhaogu felt as though his head had exploded. He clutched his skull with both hands as his entire body convulsed violently, then plunged straight toward the sea below. The skeletal spiritual domain he had maintained scattered into fading light and vanished. Han Li and Shi Chuankong immediately felt the pressure around them loosen. The abnormalities afflicting their bones disappeared, and they regained control of their bodies. At the same moment, Han Li felt his sea of consciousness become utterly hollow. His vision suddenly went black, and his body could no longer support itself as he fell toward the ocean. Seeing this, Shi Chuankong pressed one hand against the injury beneath his right ribs. Enduring the pain, he flashed forward and caught Han Li by the arm, supporting him against his shoulder. He cast a deep glance toward the dark waters below, then surrounded himself in escape light and sped away. Below them, Dao Xie struck the gourd in his hand, recalling all the puppet soldiers. He then gathered Han Li's 18 azure bamboo cloudswarm swords before enveloping himself in light and pursuing the two men. Time passed quickly, and more than half a month went by. A pitch-black flying shuttle sped over a dark expanse of ocean. Shi Chuankong had already returned to his original appearance. He stood at the front of the vessel, his silver hair whipping in the wind, looking vigorous and heroic. At the rear of the shuttle, Han Li lay motionless with his eyes tightly closed, still unconscious. A palm-sized piece of purple sun-warm jade floated above his head, releasing a hazy violet glow. A spatial barrier also surrounded his body, preventing the dense demonic energy in the surrounding world from reaching him. Dao Xie sat upright at the stern in his Taoist robes, eyes half closed as he silently regulated his breathing. At that moment he seemed to sense something. His eyes abruptly opened, and he saw Han Li's brow tighten. Han Li's eyelashes trembled several times before his eyes slowly opened. "Fellow Taoist Li," Dao Xie called. A trace of confusion passed through Han Li's eyes. After a brief pause, his gaze finally regained its clarity. He rubbed both temples as he slowly sat upright, then raised a hand and took down the purple sun-warm jade hovering above him. Brother Li, you are finally awake. How do you feel? Shi Chuankong turned around and asked. How long was I unconscious? Han Li asked in a hoarse voice. A little over half a month, Shi Chuankong replied after a slight hesitation. What happened to Immortal Xiaogu? Han Li asked. I do not know. He seemed to have suffered a severe injury before falling into the sea. You had also lost consciousness, so I could only take you away first. I had no time to worry about anything else, Shi Chuankong said, shaking his head. He took the full force of my spiritual sense sword. His soul was most likely severely wounded, so he should not trouble us again for the time being. However, the closer we get to Yeyang City, the more unexpected dangers seem to arise. There is no guarantee that others will not target us, Han Li said while gently rubbing the purple sun-warm jade. I was worried about the same thing. That is why I did not dare return directly to Yeyang City. I have been circling the Ink Sea, intending to wait until you woke before deciding what to do next, Shi Chuankong said with a sigh. My spiritual sense was severely depleted, and although my soul was not damaged as badly as Xiaogu's, it still suffered a considerable shock. Had you not used the purple sun-warm jade to nourish my soul, I would probably have remained unconscious for many more days, Han Li said with a nod. In that case, we should wait until you have recovered before setting out again, Shi Chuankong suggested after a moment of thought. Recovering from a shaken soul is not easy, and restoring my spiritual sense will also take a long time. Waiting here will only give our enemies more opportunities. We should return to Yeyang City as soon as possible, Han Li said, frowning slightly before shaking his head. Very well, Shi Chuankong replied. He immediately took control of the flying shuttle and sent it racing across the sky. Another half-month passed in the blink of an eye. Han Li and Shi Chuankong flew swiftly over the dark sea aboard the shuttle. At the edge of their vision, they could faintly see an enormous black structure suspended high in the sky. Brother Li, we are almost at Yeyang City, Shi Chuankong said, unable to conceal the joy in his smile. Violet light flickered in Han Li's eyes as his gaze fell upon the black structure. He found its appearance exceptionally strange. It was an irregular polyhedron resembling a section of ancient black wood covered in numerous branches. However, its surface gleamed like black crystal. Each protruding branch varied in length, and every cut surface faced a different direction. The object was only several hundred yards tall. There were few signs that it had been artificially carved, making it appear naturally formed. Waves of time-law energy emanated from it. For some reason, looking at the strange structure made Han Li feel dazed. Although it clearly stood in the void before him, it also seemed impossibly distant, as though it did not belong to this space at all. The violet light in his eyes brightened as he prepared to inspect it more closely, but Shi Chuankong raised a hand and stopped him. This is the supreme divine object of our sanctuary. Brother Li, it would be inappropriate to examine it so presumptuously, Shi Chuankong said, a trace of apology crossing his face. A divine object? Why does it look as though it has been abandoned here over the sea? Han Li asked with a raised brow. Haha. Even if a Tao Lord came here personally, they might not be able to move it in the slightest, Shi Chuankong replied with a hearty laugh. What exactly is this object? Han Li stopped halfway through his question. His expression suddenly changed, and he turned to look into the distance. Shi Chuankong noticed the abnormality a moment later, and his face also shifted. A short while later, a streak of escape light shot toward them from the distant horizon and stopped several hundred yards away. A dark green figure appeared within the light. It was Immortal Xiaogu. However, his face was deathly pale, his eyes were deeply sunken, and his gaze was dull and sluggish. His white hair was completely disheveled, with loose strands hanging from his temples. Nothing remained of his former transcendent bearing. He looked utterly wretched. While Han Li and Shi Chuankong regarded him gravely, Immortal Xiaogu appeared even more alarmed. His eyes widened. He raised a trembling hand and pointed at Han Li, speaking incoherently. How is it you again? Impossible. This is impossible. How could you have recovered so quickly? What is he talking about? Shi Chuankong asked, turning toward Han Li in confusion. Han Li was also frowning, his face filled with bewilderment. Could the spiritual sense sword have severely damaged his soul and left him delirious? Shi Chuankong asked, his expression tightening slightly. That is unlikely. I know the power of my spiritual sense sword very well. Zhaogu's sea of consciousness was also protected by a formidable formation. The injury I inflicted could not possibly have reduced him to this state. Something else must have happened to him after we left, but his words make no sense, Han Li replied, shaking his head. It must be an illusion. This must be an illusion. It has to be. No. I will kill you. I must kill you. Immortal Zhaogu shouted, staring fixedly at Han Li as his expression suddenly turned savage. His body flashed forward. He thrust out one hand, and his entire arm instantly extended more than 10 feet, transforming into a white bone scythe that slashed toward Han Li at tremendous speed. Although Han Li could tell there was something wrong with the man's spiritual sense, he did not dare lower his guard. His time spiritual domain expanded instantly. Shi Chuankong also hurriedly released his spatial spiritual domain. The instant Immortal Zhaogu entered the overlapping domains, his movements were obstructed and his speed sharply decreased. He roared and swung his bone scythe arm through the void. The spiritual energy within both domains was instantly shredded by a violent force, throwing the surrounding space into chaos. An aura of decay began spreading through the area. Within the distorted space, Immortal Zhaogu's speed suddenly surged again as he charged straight toward Han Li. Han Li did not dodge. With a wave of one hand, he summoned his 18 azure bamboo cloudswarm swords and fused them into a single weapon. The mantra treasure wheel within his body rapidly rotated in reverse as he charged forward to meet Immortal Zhaogu. When the two drew close, Han Li suddenly stopped. Dazzling golden light immediately erupted as the mantra treasure wheel appeared and released countless golden rays, enveloping the approaching Immortal Zhaogu. Immortal Zhaogu opened his other hand and spread his 5 fingers. His palm transformed into an enormous, grotesque bone shield. Dense runes were carved across its surface. Waves of decaying skeletal law power emerged from it, blocking all the incoming golden rays and gradually corroding them. At the same time, Immortal Zhaogu swept around from behind the shield and swung the enormous white bone scythe horizontally toward Han Li with towering murderous force, intending to cleave him in half at the waist. Han Li remained outwardly calm, but his heart tightened. A crystalline light immediately appeared between his brows, and a small translucent sword of spiritual sense shot forth once again. Before the sword could reach him, Immortal Zhaogu saw it and the light in his eyes immediately scattered. Unwillingness and despair flashed through his gaze. How is this possible? How could this be possible? He muttered. In the next instant, the small spiritual sense sword passed effortlessly through the bone shield and entered the center of Immortal Zhaogu's brow. Only after the sword entered his sea of consciousness did Han Li discover, to his astonishment, that Immortal Zhaogu's sea of consciousness was almost completely exhausted. The light surrounding his miniature soul was extremely dim. It resembled a candle flame trembling in the wind, on the verge of being extinguished at any moment. He had clearly already suffered some kind of devastating injury. Even his soul had become extraordinarily unstable. This surprised Han Li greatly. Any method capable of injuring the soul of a great Luo cultivator could not possibly be simple. His previous strike had indeed wounded Immortal Zhaogu, but it had also severely injured Han Li himself, and left him unconscious for more than half a month. According to his calculations, however, that attack could not have damaged Immortal Zhaogu's soul to such a terrible degree. Thoughts raced through Han Li's mind, but his actions did not hesitate. With a low shout, the spiritual sense sword manifested once again within Immortal Zhaogu's sea of consciousness and slashed downward. The already weakened soul offered almost no resistance. It was torn apart and then dispersed completely. Immortal Zhaogu's body froze and became motionless. Shi Chuankong had only just finished arranging the twin silver sky mirrors, and had not yet understood what had happened. Seeing an opportunity, he immediately activated the 2 mirrors and directed their light onto Immortal Zhaogu. He crossed both hands before his chest. Silver light flashed through the formation in the void, and the 2 circular mirrors exchanged positions, releasing a powerful spatial force that twisted around Immortal Zhaogu. However, the body of a great Luo cultivator was extraordinarily resilient, and Immortal Zhaogu's bones were harder than metal and stone. Within the distorted spatial force, His body merely bent and twisted slightly without suffering any substantial damage. Even after several attempts, Shi Chuankong could not crush it. Seeing this, Han Li beckoned with one hand. An exquisite black bone ring slipped from Immortal Xiaogu's finger and flew into Han Li's palm. A silver firebird shot from Han Li's shoulder and plunged into Immortal Xiaogu's body, engulfing it instantly. Shi Chuankong relaxed when he saw this. He had witnessed the power of the essence flame firebird before. Under normal circumstances, however, it could not directly threaten a great Luo cultivator. It would not even be able to penetrate such a cultivator's protective energy. The silver flames burned fiercely, producing a continuous series of crackling sounds. Han Li stared into the fire without blinking, seemingly lost in thought. "Brother Li, what is wrong?" Shi Chuankong asked. "Nothing. I was merely wondering what Xiaogu meant by those things he said." Han Li replied after a moment of silence. "Why trouble yourself over it? Whatever happened, that fellow can never threaten us again," Shi Chuankong said with a laugh. After roughly the time it took an incense stick to burn, the silver firebird returned. Immortal Xiaogu's body had already been reduced to ashes. The firebird rapidly shrank and landed in Han Li's palm. It opened its beak and spat out a small multicolored relic shaped like a finger bone. Han Li's brows twitched slightly. Without changing his expression, he put it away. "Let us go. We should hurry to Yeong City," Han Li said, glancing at Shi Chuankong. "Good," Shi Chuankong answered and immediately flew upward. Han Li recalled the essence flame firebird and followed him into the sky. To Han Li's surprise, Shi Chuankong stopped directly in front of the irregular objects suspended high above them. "Why have we stopped?" Han Li asked. "We have arrived," Shi Chuankong replied. "You mean this is Yeong City?" Han Li asked, raising an eyebrow. "It is a long story. To put it simply, this divine object is known as the Key of the Empty Realm. It is the gateway to Yeong City and the other spatial realms of the sanctuary," Shi Chuankong explained mysteriously. "Other spatial realms. No wonder this object seemed so strange. It appeared close enough to touch, yet also impossibly distant. So it stands where multiple layers of space overlap and connects many separate realms. It is no wonder you said that even a Tao Lord might not be able to move it," Han Li said, frowning at first before understanding dawned on him. "Come, let us enter the city." Shi Chuankong smiled and turned his palm over, producing a specially crafted black token covered in demonic patterns. He pressed it against the black cut surface of the lowest branch. The moment the token touched the black crystalline surface, it adhered to it like a magnet and gradually sank inside. Black light immediately appeared, accompanied by an intense spatial fluctuation. Shi Chuankong glanced at Han Li with a faint smile before stepping into the light. After briefly examining it, Han Li also stepped forward. The black light immediately contracted, and both men vanished. The strange polyhedron returned to its original state. Han Li felt the world spin around him as powerful spatial forces pulled at his body from every direction. The sensation resembled traveling through a teleportation formation, but it was many times stronger. Fortunately, it did not last long. His body soon became light, and he discovered that he had arrived in a bright, open space. A blazing sun hung in the sky, scattering brilliant light across the land. Low hills stretched across the ground below, covered in lush green grass. The immense sky and vast earth lifted the spirit. The demonic energy here was also exceptionally dense, nearly twice as concentrated as outside. Clusters of dark violet clouds floated through the air, each one formed entirely from condensed demonic energy. By comparison, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was much thinner. "Brother Shi, is this the realm where Yeong City is located?" Han Li asked as he looked around. "That is correct. This place is called the Yeong Realm. It is an independent world personally opened by Father Emperor. We have finally returned," Shi Chuankong said after taking a deep breath. As he spoke, he summoned the Black God flying shuttle and carried both of them forward. "An independent world that he personally created," Han Li exclaimed in astonishment. Opening a small secret realm was not particularly difficult. With his current abilities, Han Li could also accomplish it, although it would require a great deal of time and vast quantities of materials. However, such a creation would merely be a comparatively stable but rigid space. The realm before him was entirely different. It was no different from the demon realm outside. It possessed a sun, moon, stars, and the profound natural order through which heaven and earth revolved. The two could not be compared at all. Han Li inwardly marveled at the demon lord's heaven-defying power. It was far beyond anything he could currently imagine, much less rival. Yet endless ambition and longing also arose in his heart. As long as he continued cultivating diligently, he might one day reach such a level himself. It will still take roughly half a month to reach Yeong City from here. We have already been delayed too long, so we must increase our speed, Shi Chuankong said with a slight frown, seemingly dissatisfied with the flying shuttle's pace. He flicked his sleeve. With a soft pop, a violet talisman shot out. It flashed brightly and released countless violet runes that engulfed the black god flying shuttle before rapidly attaching themselves to its surface. The front of the shuttle curved into the shape of a bird's head. Violet light flashed across its center, and two enormous violet wings, each more than 100 feet long, condensed from the air. The shuttle hummed as its speed increased by nearly half. It transformed into a long dark violet streak and raced across the sky like lightning. Fellow Taoist Shi, since your elder brothers and sisters know that our destination is Yeong City, the road ahead may not be safe. We should remain cautious, Han Li warned. Haha. Rest assured, fellow Taoist Li, outside this realm, caution would naturally be necessary. But this is the Yeong realm. Everything within 1,000,000 miles is monitored by Father Emperor's heavenless divine eye. None of them would dare cause trouble here. Now that we have reached this place, we are completely safe, Shi Chuankong said with a laugh. Hearing this, Han Li was astonished by the demon lord's abilities, but he also felt somewhat uncomfortable. He was not accustomed to conducting his daily life under another person's surveillance. Do not worry, fellow Taoist Li. Father Emperor only monitors the Yeong realm to maintain stability. He does not investigate every minor detail, Shi Chuankong added, seemingly noticing Han Li's concern. Fellow Taoist Shi, there are certain matters I have not asked about during our journey. Now that we are approaching Yeong City, I would like you to clear up my doubts, Han Li said with a nod. Ask whatever you wish, Shi Chuankong replied without surprise, as though he had long expected the question. You are rushing back to Yeong City to participate in something important, are you not? You endured countless hardships to bring the Luoja loot back, while your brothers and sisters repeatedly tried to seize it. Is all of this connected to the same matter? Han Li asked, his eyes flickering. I originally intended to explain everything after we reached Yeong City. Since you have asked now, I will tell you. You are correct. I am returning to Yeong City because of an extremely important matter. It concerns the lives of countless inhabitants throughout the sanctuary. No matter what happens, the Luoja loot must be delivered safely, Shi Chuankong said solemnly after a brief silence. What matter could be so important? Han Li asked in surprise. The selection of the next Holy Lord, Shi Chuankong replied with a faint smile. The next Holy Lord? Is your father planning to abdicate? Han Li asked, startled. Once a cultivator reached the true immortal realm or higher, their lifespan was essentially limitless. A transfer of power would normally occur only if they met with an accident or suffered a devastating tribulation. Could something have happened to the demon lord? Father Emperor has ruled the sanctuary for countless years, and there was never any issue of succession. However, many years ago, he suddenly announced that a new Holy Lord would be selected. No one knows the exact reason, Shi Chuankong said with tightly furrowed brows, clearly just as confused by the decision. Are you returning to Yeong City because you intend to compete for the position? Han Li asked as a thought occurred to him. Heh, I have no interest whatsoever in becoming the Holy Lord. To be honest, I am bringing the Luoja loot back to Yeong City to assist my third elder brother, Shi Chuankong said, waving his hand dismissively. For the third prince? Han Li's eyes flashed. That is right. The sanctuary respects martial strength, so power determines many things. Father Emperor has 13 children, several of whom are exceptional cultivation geniuses. My eldest brother, third brother, fifth elder sister, and seventh brother are the most outstanding. However, when it comes to governing the realm, I believe all the others combined cannot compare with my third brother, Kong said, admiration appearing in his eyes. In my opinion, you are also skilled at governing. Renshan City flourished under your management, Han Li said. No. The methods I used to govern Renshan City were merely imitations of my third brother's policies. My ability is not even a fraction of his, Kong hurriedly replied. What makes him so exceptional? Han Li asked. My third brother displayed extraordinary talent and great ambition from childhood. He began helping Father Emperor manage Yeong City at a very young age. Back then, the war between our sanctuary and the Heavenly Court had only recently ended. Every region was unstable. Numerous powerful factions refused to submit fully to Yeong City. They recruited clans and sects into their own forces and fought openly and secretly among themselves. The people throughout the sanctuary suffered terribly. At that time, Father Emperor had been severely wounded and was forced to enter seclusion to recover. He had no attention to spare and intended to send the princes to various regions to resolve these problems. My eldest brother and the others feared the danger and refused to shoulder the responsibility. Only my third brother led a group of subordinates into the troubled regions without hesitation. It took him nearly 300 years to subdue every unruly faction. Afterward, he vigorously revitalized commerce and trade and founded major merchant organizations. Only then did the devastated sanctuary gradually recover. That is why my third brother enjoys such a great reputation today, Kong said with deep admiration. Your third brother is indeed extraordinary. Cultivation depends greatly on natural talent, but governing a realm depends even more upon understanding the hearts of its people. Although the sanctuary is not as vast as the Immortal Realm, the relationships between ordinary people and cultivators appear even closer and more complicated. Managing the interests of every social level is no simple task. A single mistake could bring enormous disaster upon the entire sanctuary, Han Li said with a thoughtful nod. That is true. At the time, I also failed to understand many of my third brother's decisions. It was only after traveling throughout the world, especially after visiting your Immortal Realm, that I gradually came to appreciate them. My third brother is not only skilled at governing, he is also extremely far-sighted. Later, it was he who suggested that Father Emperor reconcile with the Heavenly Court. That finally broke the Cold War deadlock and reopened commercial trade. Without him, Guangyuan House could never have expanded its business to its current scale, Kong continued. The third prince possesses extraordinary foresight. Since he has such ability, why has your father not directly named him heir? Han Li asked in confusion. My third brother ended the unrest and saved the sanctuary, winning the support of countless people. However, he also offended many powerful local factions. Those forces joined with my eldest brother and the others, and they have opposed my third brother constantly over the years. Furthermore, although Father Emperor admires my third brother's ability to govern, their personalities are completely different. Father Emperor is decisive and ruthless. A single word from him determines life and death. He believes the realm must be ruled through strength. My third brother is gentle and refined. He despises unnecessary killing and believes that education and moral guidance should be the foundation of government. Their opposing political views often lead to disputes. My eldest brother and the others, however, are experts at flattering Father Emperor. Perhaps he feels that they are more obedient and considerate than my third brother. That may be why he has still not reached a decision, Kong said with a sigh. So that is the reason, Han Li said, slowly nodding. I do not know what the current situation in Yeong City is like. Regardless of what has happened, I must help my third brother ascend to the highest position. The future of the entire sanctuary depends upon it, Kong declared firmly. Han Li looked at him but said nothing. The two continued flying forward. More than 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Yeong realm was extraordinarily vast. Because of the dense demonic energy, it was also rich in natural resources. Numerous mortal kingdoms and great clan cities existed throughout the realm, far more densely concentrated than in the outside regions. They traveled openly without concealing themselves, yet no enemies appeared. The tension Han Li had been carrying gradually faded. As they approached Yeong City, the terrain below became increasingly level. An endless plain soon appeared before them. Countless fields resembling spiritual farmlands had been cultivated across the boundless plain. A golden grain several yards tall grew within them. It resembled ordinary rice, but each grain was nearly half a foot long and shaped like a blade. A faintly sweet fragrance drifted from the fields. Countless farmers in yellow robes tended the grain, creating an extremely busy scene. As far as the eye could see, the entire land was golden. Whenever the wind passed, countless golden waves rolled across the fields, creating a magnificent sight. This plain is called the Blazing Gold Plain. It is one of the most energy-rich regions in the sanctuary, so almost all of it has been converted into sacred farmland. Most of the golden blade rice produced here is transported to Yeyang City, while the remainder is sent to other regions. This place can be considered one of the sanctuary's greatest granaries, Shi Chuankong explained. Golden blade rice? The demonic energy emitted by these grains is considerable. What purpose do they serve? Han Li asked, his gaze flickering. Golden blade rice is a grain unique to the sanctuary. It contains a trace of earthly origin essence. Eating it not only improves cultivation, but also refines the constitution and strengthens the physical body. Some body cultivators in the sanctuary eat golden blade rice continuously from the moment they are born. Their physical strength becomes astonishing. Fellow Taoist Liu is one such person, although his accomplishments can only be considered above average and remain far below the highest level. Some of Yeyang City's greatest body cultivators possess physical strength that may not be inferior to yours, despite your being human, Shi Chuankong said with a smile. You flatter me, fellow Taoist Shi. My physical accomplishments are nothing remarkable. To be honest, when it comes to body cultivation, the demon realm is indeed superior to the true immortal realm. Your natural foundations are simply different, Han Li said with a laugh. Each side has its own strengths, Shi Chuankong replied modestly, although he clearly appeared pleased. I have noticed that the golden blade rice varies in appearance. Is it divided into different grades? Han Li asked while looking down. Like spiritual herbs, golden blade rice is judged by its age rather than by grade. The older it becomes, the smaller the improvement in quality, so most people do not intentionally cultivate it for excessive periods. Fellow Taoist Li, you seem quite interested in this rice, Shi Chuankong observed. Naturally, I am interested in all the unusual treasures found in your sanctuary, Han Li replied with a laugh. This can hardly be considered a rare treasure. Once we reach Yeyang City, I will have my third brother allocate a batch of the finest golden blade rice for you to taste, Shi Chuankong said. Then I must thank you, fellow Taoist Shi, Han Li replied with a smile, though an unusual glint passed through the depths of his eyes. This was not the first time he had heard the name golden blade rice. He had previously encountered it on the pill formula for the Vajra Ironbone pill, which he had found inside the storage treasure of Gongshujiu. The principal ingredient of the Vajra Ironbone pill was golden blade rice. However, the formula specifically mentioned dragon pattern golden blade rice. Han Li did not know whether that was some unusual variety. He looked down at the golden plain, his eyes flickering in thought. Ever since he had completed the great cyclic astral origin art, he had been unable to find another suitable body refinement technique. As a result, the cultivation of his physical body had remained stagnant. Under ordinary circumstances, this would not have mattered greatly. However, he had now fully mastered the 5th level of the spirit refinement technique, and had begun to sense that his physical body could no longer withstand the immense power of his spiritual sense. Strengthening his body had become an urgent necessity. Although the Vajra Ironbone pill was a metal attribute law pill, it also possessed the ability to reinforce the physical body. Arriving in the demon realm through such an unexpected series of events might have presented him with a rare opportunity. Once he reached Yeyang City, he would need to investigate the matter carefully. The two continued onward for several more days before finally reaching Yeyang City. Although Shi Chuankong had already described the city to him, Han Li was still deeply shocked when he saw it with his own eyes. The previously flat ground ahead suddenly rose into an undulating landscape, revealing a vast white mountain range. The mountains stretched for 10,000 miles. Their main peak towered into the clouds like a colossal pillar supporting the heavens, its enormous outline radiating a majestic and overwhelming aura. South of the White Mountains, an unimaginably broad river wound across the land. Its waters surged endlessly, magnificent and boundless. Seen from a distance, the river resembled an enormous white dragon coiled across the earth. Its grandeur was not inferior to the 10,000-mile mountain range. Countless ships of every size traveled along the broad river, their masts and sails forming a dense forest across the water. The entire region bustled with extraordinary activity. Yiyang City stood between the mountain range and the mighty river. Its scale was so vast that it encompassed the entire White Mountain range and even portions of the river itself. The city was enormous beyond imagination. Its walls stood more than 1,000 yards tall and were completely black, constructed from gigantic blocks of dark stone. Their surfaces were smooth and orderly, and the walls alone formed a breathtaking sight. Within them, countless towering structures rose from the ground in dense ranks, extending all the way to the edge of vision. From afar, the buildings of Yiyang City appeared tall and slender, giving the city a majestic and imposing character unlike any of the cities they had passed during their journey. The White Mountain range within the city stretched from east to west, while the great river ran almost parallel to it. Using the mountains and river as boundaries, Yiyang City was divided into 3 vast districts. Hanli and Shichuankong currently stood south of the city. The nearest district was filled with relatively low buildings packed so tightly together that they resembled a vast honeycomb, with almost no empty space between them. The buildings in the central district were noticeably taller and more widely separated. Countless broad streets crossed one another throughout the area. Carriages flowed continuously, pedestrians moved like shuttles through a loom, and the entire district was prosperous and lively. The northernmost district was obscured by the White Mountain range and could not be seen clearly. Each of the 3 districts covered an immense area. Any one of them alone was far larger than the greatest city Han Li had encountered during the entire journey.